Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. So, on this side of YouTube, people tend to cover leaving this reality quite a bit. And it's not just that, but believing in people's ability to leave this reality when they so choose. And, it's something I could never really, I can never really protest that kind of sentiment because especially once you realize what kind of like freak show this is. You know, there's so many people who don't even actually believe that depression is a real thing. And like you'll see it in the most like dedicated natalists who deny the existence of mental health itself, right? Maybe it's just not natalists themselves, but to have people undergoing depression on like a mass scale, which I really think it's there's definitely elements to it depending on where you go, but like really, what exactly are most people doing every day that is making them happy, like genuinely happy? A lot of things that have to do with happiness have nothing to do with making money, but yet they're intertwined in people's daily lives. Like I think there's a threshold to which human beings can tolerate so much mental and psychological trauma that they reimagine it as something that they are destined to like um they're destined to proliferate, right? They're destined to keep it going on and on and on, right? Because they never resolve it, they never deal with it, so they lie to themselves that in their worst moments, in their most miserable, their most the most painful moments, that there's happiness there, right? Which you can it's very romanticized in media and culture, right? You can still be happy at your work. A lot of people are just like like if you knew how much the average person suffers in like a developing country, that sentiment is such garbage, it's not even funny. And the weird thing is, people in developed countries are suffering mentally from a society they can no longer interact with because it's just developed past the need for them, to be honest. Like you can look up whatever, and it's part of this circle jerk of international politics that never seems to pinpoint the fact that globalization in particular happened under capitalism. And capitalism has boom and bust cycles. Uh, God damn it! Like this is such like this is like my terminally online economics education coming through. But basically there'll be periods where green line go up, then green line slump down, right? Then the green line maybe slump for a long time and then spike back up again, right? Basically, right? Boom, economic bust, right? You probably heard it on the news plenty of times. That happens within countries all the time. Different countries to different extents all the time. What do you think happens if that system is inflicted on the entire planet, right? That's what we're in right now. Like, in the Cold War era, it still was there to some, like, to varying degrees, but like once the Soviet Union fell, like it was a capitalist world once again, right? It was a fully capitalist world once again. And those cycles, those economic downturns that you would normally experience like in one country affect everybody now. I mean, what do you think the Great Recession was? Why do you think the Great Depression affected, like, they don't really talk about how the Great Depression affected like the colonies at that time, because it was like what, 1929, around that? No, like late 1920s early 1930s. It's really not covered or highlighted necessarily. It's just talked about like what was going on in the US, Germany, uh, the big players, right? Even so, like now, I think there was a recession in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like during the pandemic. But even then, just remember back to the 2008 recession. Like I remember prices of things just went, they were just going up like, they were going up like crazy. And like a lot of people got really rich. Most people became poorer and poorer. And like 12 years, 13 years onward, and people are becoming progressively poorer to the point where the ruling class is now telling us that you will own nothing and be happy. It's just happening in front of our faces right now, and people are just too complacent. Like literally, they're just the NPCs. Calling them NPCs doesn't even do it justice. Like people are just, I don't know, they're just perfect worker drones now. Really, that's what they are. The fact that you can tell them what you're doing to them, why you're doing it to them, and why you'll keep doing it to them, and they still aren't reacting. You'd be crazy to try and be martyred for people like this. You'd be insane. And, that's why my personal views on like uh self euthanasia, I I truly believe it's something that should be available to people. I think yeah, I was seeing a story where like a 23-year-old woman, I think, yeah, a 23-year-old woman was able to get the procedure done in like Belgium, and it became like a big news scandal or something. I know in Belgium and Switzerland it is permitted, but they don't just let you walk in and like be like, yeah, like I'm out. They I think it takes like a few months in counseling and all that. Most I would do, most I think I would recommend is like a month max. If somebody comes to you saying that kind of thing, like I don't see why you feel the need to force them to stay in this reality. And this is like, I've had friends do that to themselves, by the way. It's not like I'm speaking with no point of reference. Who either said they wanted to or actually did it. And as much as I care for them, would it really be good for me to force someone who does not want to be here, didn't ask to be here, and wants to leave on their own terms? Would it be fair for me to try and like manipulate them into staying? I mean, it's easier said than done, I guess. I'll say it like this, but mentally, it's just, you know, it really, it really does teach you a lot about, what or how you interact with the world is really only up to you. It's ultimately only ever going to be up to you, especially how you interact with people. Sure, you might have ways of interacting with people that you've learned or you've adapted to, whatever, but ultimately it's like it's gonna come down to uh, what prompts you react to the most, right? And it's also one reason why I really believe if it was a system that was commonly available, people would be a lot more conscious of one another. They'd be a lot more, without even having to be like no public health advertisements or campaigns or mental health like bullcrap songs. People are just naturally check on one another. They'll be naturally more compassionate to one another because like you could say like, oh, what a drama. Like, even if you like say, oh, that's so dramatic or like attention seeking. Okay, fine, they're dead. Now what? Right? Now what? You're not gonna resurrect them and be like, how dare you try and seek attention that way? And it's not like people can't do that right now. They do it all the time. And the frequency at which people do it all the time now, you really have to wonder, what the hell are we progressing towards? I saw a story of a Russian, I think a rapper or something, who like ended himself because he didn't want to get recruited for the war and like go and harm Ukrainians. And that is probably one of the most honorable things I've ever seen a human being do. Like, truly. He ended himself because he personally believed that he couldn't be a part of spreading misery in that way. Right? That's the kind of person you would want to have, like, that's the kind of person you would want to have as like a leader. And this isn't like encouraging people to follow his footsteps necessarily, but to have that kind of mindset. Like, you can look at a fellow human being and be like, no, I'd rather me, rather me instead of like innocent people, right? These are innocent people in this context. A lot of Russian people are innocent too, by the way, right? The Western media is only going to say one thing, and it always will, right? And it just shows how subverted even like the left wing in Western media is, because they will toe the line when it becomes convenient. And you really have to wonder if they're actually an opposition or just controlled opposition, right? Russians didn't ask for this. Ukrainians didn't ask for this. Russians haven't had control of their country literally ever. Are there supporters? Sure. Like, it's probably like, you know, don't get caught up in politics. Don't get caught up in all these symbolisms and mythologies. That's what culture. That's literally what nationalism is. It's just symbols and mythology, right? That people forcefully tell themselves every day to believe in. Don't get caught up in all of it, because at the end of the day, like, we're all still trying to find food and shelter and warmth, right? It might look different everywhere, but it's still the same damn thing. And it's getting to a point where, like, once once it reaches like a critical point, there'll be like a collective uh crisis of conscience, like societal breakdown. It's already chipping away. Like, I don't even know what is even holding society together at this point. Is it just greed? Right? Is it greed? I really have to wonder, because, like, maybe it's just seeing other people continuing that makes other people continue, even though they don't know why they're doing it. I know it doesn't make sense. Like, what about this? What about this place makes sense, honestly? Like, what about this place really makes sense? And, in saying what I am, by the way, like, you know, expiring on your own terms sounds, very autonomous, right? But this isn't in a means to like just tell you to do it whenever, wherever, however, right? You don't want to leave people with that kind of like horrendous trauma, right? You don't. You really don't. I would never advocate for that at all. Never. Never. I don't care how you want to justify it. I don't care if you think you're right. I don't care, right? In a medical situation, in a medical setting, absolutely do it there, right? Like, it's another it more so has to do also with like dying with dignity, right? Because I think that's a very important thing. People don't talk about death itself very much. And it's something about like modern sort of Western culture that we all have to live in, that the party never really ends. Like in the 19th century, there were when cameras started becoming more commercially available, so to speak, people would literally take pictures with their dead children. Like they'd line up all their like seven kids, and then like two of them would just be like frozen in a pose, but they would look so alive, but they're not. Like it's so, I can't really say it's creepy. It's it is what it is, right? It is what it is. And people had to live with death like that just in the last 2 centuries, like literally in the 19th century, right? People had to live uh with death, alongside death, for a long time. Then funeral services came in, funeral industry came in, rather. And death just became like this thing you do, once every few years or a couple of months, like let's say just a few years, right? You go have the ceremony, and then like that's that, right? It's Everything is so compartmentalized now, and I think it's causing humanity a lot of like dissonance. While it would make sense to organize everything in like a neat little box that way, our reality is very different. Every individual, like, imagine that like your arms and legs and your feet and your hands are like different people just on your body. Or even the stories you tell yourself, the things you tell yourself repeatedly. What about that is really you? What does it mean to even act like you? What would it mean if you died? And it's one of those like technological dystopian kind of questions, because they're working on brain transplants right now. So they're going to transfer somebody's brain to another person's brain. They'll say, oh, it's maybe decades off, but the way these things work, they've probably already done them. They just want them now to be displayed commercially, right? To be displayed for commercial consumption. But like they've probably known whether or not it was possible for like decades, probably even since like World War II, since like the end of World War II or something. At that point, what is even death anymore? And to me, that's what I truly, truly fear, is that death will become extinct. Whatever your understanding of death is, there's a certain kind of finality there that human beings have not been able to escape. Right? Whatever you think happens beyond that or doesn't happen, that's not what I'm talking about. If human beings manage to extend human life beyond like even 200 years right now, if they manage to do that, like, oh man, not even the most like, not even the most skilled like horror genre creator could come up with what the hell that is going to look like. Like, to me, Black Mirror was a documentary. It was not like this. I mean, I'm pretty sure they were taking inspiration from things that are already happening in our reality right now. But that's why I say it's a documentary. They'll find a way to trap your consciousness and do whatever the hell they want with it for eternity with technology right now. That's why I've said before, like, don't think that like you just die and that's it. To me, personally. Right? I don't think this reality will let you get away that easily. And they're showing you now. they're showing you now that they're not going to let you get away with it. You know, within the next 10 years, they'll say death will be a thing of the past. I guarantee you that. Within the decade. Within this freaking decade, like, we'll be told that. And if I have to hear that, like, I don't even know. I really, I don't know. I don't know. It's not like we didn't see it coming. It's not like we wouldn't see it coming. That's why, to me, it's more important than ever, you know, to when I, especially when I talk about your own terms, I say live by your own terms as well. I say you should, you know, you should have like your own code that you live by, your own moral code that you live by, right? Because at the end of the day, it's just you. You're the only one who's going to decide whether or not what you're doing is right or wrong. But whether or not you feel right or wrong within yourself is the most important thing about it. Having principles in that sense is what I mean by your own terms, right? Though I hope I'd be communicating to someone who's also like at least compassionate and understanding enough to understand themselves, but also to understand the harm in committing certain actions to others, right? To minimize the suffering, right? In quotes, the minimize the harm and the suffering as much as possible, right? While also being able to do what you want. That to me is what your own terms means to me, right? I don't see, you know, and I'm glad like a lot of creators, you know, they tell people to express themselves, to be themselves, to you know, to not let the expectations of this reality weigh them down. And I'm glad I've never really come across somebody who just says, you know, take what you want from whoever you want and, you know, just harm whoever you want or do. No, no. Like, you know, just check out of this society, basically. Just check out at most. But, you know, do things that you enjoy. That's the overwhelming sentiment I see in this space. And I'm glad, right? You know, you do as you want. Don't become the reason to continue the madness, basically. You can, you know, we can't live here without exploiting somebody in some way. But try your best, you know. Man, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like like this the kind of things I really feel like I speak to the void about because you know a lot of people you can minimize harm, right? I would hope that I would be talking to people who understand what I mean, right? Or like at least on an emotional level. Do things that minimize harm. Do things that, you know, if you've already agreed that having children is not a good thing and you're not going to, that's one of the greatest things you can do to minimize harm already. So I would hope I don't need to even explain that. But, you know, to the best of your ability, you decide your life terms, right? And to the best of to what you can control, you also decide how that life expires, right? To the best, you know, to what you can really control. You know, you can't control your genetics, you can't control like freak accidents and everything, but you know, it's ultimately the mindset you have that is what you will die with, essentially, right? I hope I haven't rambled on too long. It's a topic I've been wanting to cover for quite a while, but I just haven't been able to get the exact points that I wanted down. Though I think I've covered a lot of it in this video. But yeah, thanks for listening.